The problem is most businesses are built backwards. The first thing businesses do is they launch a business, they launch a website, they have a business card designed, and they pump out all these words, and they spend the rest of their life chasing customers down. Where the right way to build a business is to know their perspective, what feels familiar to them, the style that resonates for them, position their business with good pricing psychology, and now you can use the right words that speaks their lingo, that instead of coming at people or chasing people, you're attracting people like a lighthouse.
Welcome to the Shine Strategy Podcast, where entrepreneurs, visionaries, and business owners are getting visible and changing the world. I'm your host, Heather Burgett, an award-winning publicist, entrepreneur, and business mentor. Today's show is sponsored by PR Stars. For more inspiration and Shine strategies, head over to shineinsiders.com now for my free masterclass so that you too can get visible and go from local to global. Hey, Shine Insiders! Are you tired of being the best kept secret in your industry? Well, I have a solution for you, and it's called free publicity, and we can actually get it for you fast. Go ahead on over to podcast.theshinestrategy.com. Over there, you're going to find my free pitch template, and that's going to help you get into major newspapers so that you can stop struggling to find your clients. Let them find you. We also have all of our show notes over there. You'll also see how to join my community and my upcoming free masterclass. So again, that's podcast.theshinestrategy.com. All right, everyone, let's dig in. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I have an incredible guest for you today. His name is Jeffrey Shaw, and he is the host of Creative Warriors Podcast. He's also a TEDx speaker, a brand consultant, a keynote speaker, and author of the book, Lingo, Discover Your Ideal Customer's Secret Language and Make Your Business Irresistible. I'm really excited to ask some questions about that one today. And Jeffrey has been, for over 3 decades, one of the most sought-after portrait photographers in the U.S. He has photographed the families of such notable sport legends as Tom Seaver and Pat Riley, news anchors Jim Nantz and David Bloom, supermodel Stephanie Seymour, and C-suite executives from Twitter, Anheuser-Busch, 3M, as well as Wall Street leaders, too many to mention. And his portraits have appeared on the Oprah Show, in People Magazine, O Magazine, and so many others. Now, Jeffrey has used his eye as a photographer to teach marketing and sales strategies that enable businesses to see their customers as a photographer sees their subject, to understand them, connect deeper, and trigger emotions in order to attract and retain ideal customers. So, Jeffrey, I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Who is this guy?
I know, we have so much to talk about. Oh my gosh, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here with you. I love your enthusiasm and being in your space and your world, so thank you.
Likewise, and oh my gosh, congratulations. I saw that you've had over 1 million downloads on your podcast. That's amazing.
It's remarkable. It goes by in a flash. It's been more than 5 years and more than 500 episodes, and you turn around and the same will happen for you. Just keep on going.
Oh my gosh, I want to be you when I grow up.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so let's see. Where should we start? Okay, this is, I guess, the whole concept that really fascinates me is how you are taking your career, because all of us really end up somewhere where all of our life experience culminates into something unique. And you for sure have that. So you started in photography and portraiture especially, and now you use that to teach about sales and marketing. So can you talk a little bit about that transition, how that happened? I'm just really eager to hear how this is all connected.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly, Heather, one of the hardest things for people. And I have the good fortune of being on the opposite side of so many fences in life, right? So as I help others with it, it's also my own process at the same time. And I think that's true for a lot of us. I like to call it the positive escalator, so that I keep in mind I don't have to be done or perfect, but that I just have to be a couple steps ahead of people I serve and bring them up with me, and that's the positive escalator. I think one of the hardest things for us is to make the connection between in our lives, to see that common thread. And for the longest time, well, I guess I should say, I morphed, if you will, and transitioned from being a photographer into initially a business coach turned speaker and consultant, really out of my love for my coach. I had a coach for a lot of years, and when he retired, I decided I wanted to do for others as he did for me, but it was originally just sort of a side gig. I didn't think it would take over my life. But as often happens, is when something new and great passion came along, suddenly what I was doing as a photographer, I just started losing interest in it because I saw, I saw a light of something else I could do. And for the longest time, at best, I used my photography experience to kind of give a reason as to why I deserved to talk on the subject. It's not until recently that the connections have become so profound to me as a photographer that I can use my experience as a photographer to teach business lessons. Fundamentally, the biggest lesson I teach is, as you said in my bio, which is as a photographer for 35 years, I know how to make people feel seen, right? And that's a human experience we don't get. And as you know, I mean, your work is about helping people shine, and we go through these lives and we desire to be seen. And my number one experience as a photographer, and what I think I was particularly good at, was helping people feel valued and seen, because almost everyone goes into a photo shoot insecure and lacking confidence. And now I can make the connection between that and now my mission in life is to make businesses make their customers feel seen. Because at the end of the day, I want a world where everybody feels seen, where we feel seen and served by the businesses that we choose, that we don't feel like we're one of a million, but instead that we're one in a million. I want to feel like the brands that I choose to give my hard-earned money to, the brands that I give my hard-earned money to, I want them to I hold them to making me feel like I'm one in a million, even if I know I'm one of a million. It's how I want to feel. So that's how I help businesses today. So to me, there's a direct connection to lessons I learned as a photographer and how I can now use that to serve businesses to attract their ideal customers.
I love this so much because it's so true. I mean, when people are stepping in front of the camera, a lot comes up. And as a publicist, I've dealt with this for many years. So, I'm very used to working with people like yourself in terms of doing photo shoots for headshots or magazines or whatever it may be. And I love that there's this whole connection of being seen now, not just for, as you're talking, for maybe your clients, but it's also their customers. And so how does that translate? So I think, I'm excited to read your book. I haven't read it yet, but so how does this work? You talk about this secret language that people use in their marketing.
Yeah. So the book being called Lingo, let's first define that. Because lingo is not, in my definition, it's not a jargon, right? And I do get that there's a similarity in the terms, right? There's a lingo amongst teenagers and corporate lingo. And I'll tell you what, Heather, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life since I was 14. And it probably wasn't until 10 years ago I finally had the guts to ask somebody what C-suite meant. And for anybody listening, C-suite are your C-level executives, CEO, COO, CMO, CFO. All those executives that have C in their title are referred to as the C-suite. Well, when you've been an entrepreneur your whole life, I've never been exposed to that term. It didn't mean anything to me.
What were you doing at 14?
I was selling eggs door to door. It was brilliant. I lived in the country, and one thing we had a lot of were chickens and eggs. So I went door to door selling eggs on Saturdays because everybody needs eggs for Sunday morning breakfast. It was brilliant. It was $1.25 a dozen in 1978. So I'm telling you, I knew I priced at a high price too. As I interpret it, it's not the jargon. That's not what I'm going for. The way this translates is that lingo is the ability to know people's values, their priorities, their essence, and truly to speak someone's lingo is to tap into their unspoken emotions. A phrase I use often is that businesses that get their customers, get being in quotes, businesses that get their customers, get better customers. That the goal in business and marketing today should be for your clients, your ideal clients, the people you're meant to serve. The goal should be for them to say, wow, it's like you're in my head. When somebody feels that depth of emotion, that's when you know you've tapped into their lingo, their unspoken emotions. It's sort of like that friend you haven't seen in 5 years, but when you get together, it's as if no time had passed. Why? Because you get each other. There's just this lingo that you share, right? There's this thing that you share. So that's what I'm striving for as I help businesses really understand the lingo and what I refer to as kind of their secret language, because they don't know it. They don't know that they're giving off this aura. But if you can tap into it, that's their secret language.
Wow. And this is so cool. I'm definitely taking notes. I just was talking yesterday with my own business coach. She said, you're speaking your language. You're not speaking your client's language. So because I'm, they often say when you're standing too close to the tree, or you don't see the full picture, or you can't see the forest through the trees. And so I feel like that's been something for me in my own marketing and branding that is constantly evolving and developing. And after working in corporate PR for so long, being able to talk about it now in a way where people get it, especially being something that is such a mystery to most people, and people hear PR or public relations and they're like, okay, what is that exactly?
Yeah.
So finding a way to talk about it that people actually can digest and get it.
Right. And I think a key, I just came from, having gotten in very early this morning, but I had been attending the conference of the National Speakers Association for the last 5 days, and had the privilege of witnessing an aha moment among somebody I got in a conversation with. And I've had this conversation with many, so I'll share it with you and your audience. I think may make a difference for you. Is that I mentioned a moment ago about the positive escalator. The fact of the matter is that you are a couple steps ahead of the people that you're meant to serve and that you can serve. Therefore, think of yourself as a leader. And there's a very different language in leader versus follower. Right. So, you're so comfortable with what you do in PR and what so you're likely speaking from the perspective of a leader. Right. So insecurity or things that other people are experiencing, you can relate to because you've been there. But somehow in our leadership role, we forget those emotions. But it's important to understand those people that are a couple steps behind you, who you can serve, are feeling and thinking a little differently. And all you need to do is tap into how you felt when you were there. And then you can start to speak their lingo. And in my book, I actually broke this down into what I refer to as the 5 primary emotional triggers that through all my years of experience, that it's a great starting point. If you just start with these 5 emotional triggers, if you take the time to understand those 5 things about your ideal customer, there's a good chance you can then speak their lingo.
Can you give us an example of one of those
Sure.
triggers?
Yeah. So I'll even run through all 5 real quickly if you want.
Go for it.
Yeah. So
Let's do it.
The first is perspective. Like, you have to understand their perspective, and it's key. I mean, don't even begin to speak someone's lingo unless you're willing to stand in their shoes and truly be them without judgment or assumption. One of the things I also do in my business is I work with a lot of HR professionals and companies on how to recruit ideal employees. And there's a huge amount of friction between the people hiring and the millennial workforce that they're hiring. There's so much attitude against millennials and judgments and assumptions. And I'm like, how do you expect to hire ideal employees and wonderful employees if you're already holding a negative perspective about them, which is inaccurate? You might think they're entitled. The fact of the matter is, millennials are the first generation to have the audacity to not settle. They want everything and they deserve it. Good for them.
Good point.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So, first you have to put yourself in the right perspective of who you're speaking to. That's number 1. Number 2, which I think is really the most powerful of all, one of the most powerful of human emotions, is familiarity. It's a psychological trigger, right? So what is familiar to us stands out and creates comfort. So whatever you know in life, you can't unsee. Right. So on a practical sense, there are certain logos and brands that we're so familiar with, you can't not see it. Like, you just can't miss it. But emotionally, the feeling of familiarity, whether it's comfort food or smells. I just came back from that conference in Denver, and the moment I got off the plane, the feeling of the air, there's this smoothness, this velvet smoothness to the Denver air that is indescribable. But to me, it immediately brought me back to the summer between my junior and senior year in high school that I spent out there. And, smells. Miami has a patented smell, a scent.
Wait.
Yeah.
Back up.
Yeah, crazy. Well, when I was moving to Miami and I was going to all these different residences, these high rises, they all smelled the same. And I looked into it, and there is a Miami scent called Hope, created by a local company. And most of the buildings, This is what they pump into the air system when you walk into the lobbies. And think about the power of that. Miami's number one business is tourism. So you smell that smell. Next time you smell that, it's going to trigger feelings of familiarity back to when you were vacationing there. It's the whole premise behind comfort food and, baking an apple pie when you're selling your house. So when people walk into your house, it smells like apple pie. And right. So familiarity is a hugely important emotional trigger. So you want to figure out what can you do to recreate the powerful triggers of familiarity to the people you want to reach based on, what's the feel, the look, the smell, whatever it is that your business can do. Third is style. Right? It's understanding the style. Are they contemporary? Are they traditional? Are they inappropriate language? Is it very traditional? What's their style so that you can, the style of your business can resonate with their style. Comedians are really good at this. I mean, comedians range from really being foul-mouthed to clean, and there are no comedians for everybody, and neither is any business. So what's your style? What's your brand voice? And how does that align with the people you're meant to serve? Fourth is pricing psychology, which is less about price and it's more about perception, because pricing creates perception. So the whole alignment of you would actually need to position your business, and for a lot of businesses, that they need to charge a lot more than they are in order to be aligned with the people they want to serve. One of the greatest disservices a business can do is to price their services or their products low on the scale, and then they wonder why they're attracting less profitable customers, because you haven't aligned with the thought process through your pricing. And then lastly are the words. And here's what's key about that. The key is the order. The problem is most businesses are built backwards. The first thing businesses do is they launch a business, they launch a website, they have a business card designed, and they pump out all these words, and they spend the rest of their life chasing customers down. Where the right way to build a business is to know their perspective, what feels familiar to them, the style that resonates for them, position their business with good pricing psychology, and now you can use the right words that speaks their lingo, that instead of coming at people or chasing people, you're attracting people like a lighthouse. That was a lot.
That is, and I think we all need to read your book to really dig into it and get all the details.
That would be easier. You'll have 200 pages of content instead of 3 minutes of explanation.
Well, and I know you also have a gift that you're going to give our listeners today too, so we can talk about that more at the end as well, but I think that ties into all of this that we're talking about here.
Indeed.
This is great. Okay, so you also serve, your podcast is called Creative Warriors. So, and I love the tagline, create, serve, be prosperous. Is that a nod to Spock in any way?
Is it, so what's that term, odd to Spock?
A nod to Spock. Were you a Star Trek fan?
I'm not. Isn't that funny? Talk about not talking my lingo. I'm like, huh? That's what not speaking someone's lingo means. Like, huh?
He's like, what? Yes. I thought his thing was be prosperous. That was his
I have no idea. I'm probably one of the few humans that have never seen an episode of Star Trek, to be honest with you.
I'm more Star Wars than Star Trek, but I did like Star Trek too. All right. Well, anyway, so let's dig into Creative Warriors. Yeah. Now, what does that mean to be a creative warrior?
So it's had to evolve, and that's as we all do. So when I launched the podcast in 2014, it really was, I was thinking about how challenging it is to be a creative person in business, my background having been a photographer. And I didn't gear the show towards photographers by any means, and I was careful not to because I felt that would be too limiting of an audience. But, I felt the struggles were similar no matter what type of creative business you were in. What I realized, and when the show really took off, and I will offer this to any other fellow podcasters listening, yourself included, when the show really took off and became scalable is when I tapped into a broader need, which was that it wasn't a show for creatives in business. Really, the show is for those of us that are in business doing something unique that need creative solutions to business, right? Because traditional business doesn't work. Chasing customers don't work for a lot of us. If our businesses, just as the audience that I know you set out to serve, if our audience are heart-centered, soul-driven, purpose-driven people, then, and if that's who you are in the world, guess what? The world wasn't designed that way originally. We're changing it. We're transforming the world so that I believe creative warriors will be the majority, but we're not yet. And so what that means is we live in a world that is still salesy and chasing and a little creepy and, more assertive. And then there's this huge mass of us warriors, creative warriors, who are soul driven and purpose driven and heart centered. The problem is nobody's given us the tools to be in business that way. So that's what I try to do in the show. So we talk about different strategies, to different mindsets around sales. Instead of, selling to people, how that really means that you're moving people, right? And that's one of my fundamental shifts I offer all the time in this show, is to stop thinking about selling, but moving people. How are you moving people from where they are to where they want to be or what they need in their lives? How are you moving people emotionally? And then literally, how are you moving people through your business processes, right? So if you think about it moving, then hopefully the result of that is that you can have a shift of energy from being salesy to showing up committed. Because the crazy thing is, when your customers know that you are committed to their well-being, you can actually be really salesy, and it never energetically feels creepy.
Right. Well, I think that's so much of what we talk about in my community too, is, and I want to dig into this with you a little bit, is, we have, my podcast obviously is the Shine Strategy. So we talk a lot about how you can tap into your own unique gifts and shine them into the world. And we do a lot of this from a spiritually grounded place. And I know that you talk a lot about integrating spirituality into business with your audience. And it's when we're so much in our truth, our purpose, our mission, our why, when we're authentically doing what we are the only one in the world meant to do, the way we can do it, that you don't have to sell, because you're doing what you love. You're doing it from a genuine place. And that's when people resonate with you. They are attracted to you. So can you speak a little bit to this sort of shine concept of being someone that is conducting your business from your core truth?
Yeah. And that's what it feels like to the recipient when you're speaking their lingo. Right? When you're energetically, to speak someone's lingo is to be energetically and spiritually aligned. That doesn't mean you share the same philosophy spiritually. In fact, I've come to hate the word like-minded. Like, I don't want a world of like-minded people. Let's embrace the diversity. So that doesn't have to be a part of Lingo or a part of the community you build. I'm launching in September, maybe October, hoping for September. I'm launching this new community idea I have that'll be hopefully a virtual community, a whole different level. And part of it is that it's creating that diversity, and yet the common experiences that we go through as creative warriors. And Heather, here's the thing about your whole concept around shine. I will share with you that the biggest turning point in my life was when I was in coach training. And now, mind you, up to this point, I had identified 100%. Well, first of all, I also identified as a straight man, but it's a whole other story. But at that point in 2009, when I was in coach training, I was a photographer. I intentionally structured my photography business to be very high end. And so I didn't have to encounter a lot of people, because I identified as an introvert and shy and withdrawn. And I wanted to keep a safe little world. So I only served 150 people a year, and more than half of them were repeat. So I only needed to get to know maybe 70 new people a year in the world. And that was good for me. I didn't want to really know any more. I didn't want to have to go through the experience of getting to know any more people than that on an annual basis. So in that coach training, Marianne Williamson's poem, Our Deepest Fear, was read. And there was one line in that poem that changed, two lines really, that really changed my whole world. One was, you're playing it small doesn't serve the world. And that made me realize how inadvertently introversion and shyness, not letting my light shine, how that actually was somewhat selfish. And I say somewhat because I feel bad saying that to people, but it's a bit of a wake-up call. That at the end of the day, my shyness was selfish, right? Because I wasn't sharing. I wasn't coming out. I wasn't being bigger and letting my light shine. And of course, that's the other line that made the difference, is that when you let your light shine, you unconsciously give others permission to do the same. And that was life-changing for me. So that's kind of that was the moment in that coach training that really I got the idea of shine and how to show up in the world in a way that you had greater impact on people. I think most of us were raised in a world of thinking of our highest value is to be humble. And I think what a lot of us had to learn, you must see this in your work all the time, is it's not the humbles of bad virtue, but first of all, is it false humbleness? Oh, this old sweater, that type of humbleness, this old thing. Or is it self-centered because you're not doing the world a favor by letting your inner light shine?
Oh my gosh, yes. I really resonate with everything you're saying. In fact, I have that poem you're referencing, Marianne Williamson's, next to my desk.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, when she ran for Congress a few years back, there was a full-page ad in a magazine with the poem. And that poem is often misattributed to Nelson Mandela because he quoted her from her book. I think it's from A Return to Love.
It is.
And it is so powerful. And what you're saying is so right on, that so many people will think, oh, I'm being braggadocious, or it's arrogant. It's not about me. I don't want to just put the focus on me and talk about me. But that is often, I think, one of the biggest hurdles and mistakes that small business owners, entrepreneurs, creatives can make, especially people that I find are like on the creative side. They don't want to be in the front of the business or in the spotlight. They think it's selling out. We talk about selling, you can sell yourself without selling your soul. And you can do it in a spiritually grounded way that's actually in alignment with who you are and your life's purpose, and that you're not being egotistic if you're doing that, because, that's the ego is the thing that always tries to sabotage you or keep you small. So why are you staying behind the scenes? Why are you playing small? You really have to look at those questions and ask yourself, what is my purpose here? And if I really want to serve and reach these people, I've got to step out in front, and so they can see me, and so the world can have a way of finding you and your services.
Yeah, I think if you or any of your listeners haven't heard or seen the video from when they were greenlighting the movie The Greatest Showman, and Kayla Settle, I think was her name, but she was the bearded woman in the movie, and there's a video online on YouTube. If you just Google "This Is Me," it'll probably come up. But it's the video when they were green lighting, before the project was green lighted. So they were kind of auditioning for the studios to get the funding. And there's this video of her singing the song "This Is Me" behind the podium. And there's a beautiful moment where she comes out from behind the podium, which she explains prior to the video how frightening that was for her, because she's
I think I saw this. They're all there, right? Hugh Jackman and everyone.
Yes, they're all there.
Yeah.
And that was a turning moment, like for her to step out and just say, "This is me." It's incredibly powerful.
Song.
It was my anthem before I gave my TEDx talk. Like I would rehearse, which I did for like a month. But before I would rehearse, I would listen to the song and I would dance it out and wide open arms, like "This is me," and just really own that space and that shine moment. That's how I did rehearsals, and that's what was going on before I walked on stage.
That is beautiful. I know I get chills, and I think I probably get a little teary-eyed every time I hear that song. It's just so powerful. And if you saw the movie and you know the person that's actually playing this role, it's actually truly from her heart, because she's not just playing a role. This is from her heart.
Very much.
Beautiful. So with your Creative Warriors show, I'd love to hear about, and maybe you can't say this because it's like picking your favorite child, but do you have any favorite guests?
Gosh, and as I have 3 kids, and I tell them they're all my favorite at different times, so it works out. So I think it's okay to have favorites. Gosh, I have to say, it always changes. I mean, my interview with Julia Cameron from the legendary book, The Artist's Way, right? That's to date still my most popular episode. Like, I wonder if it'll ever be beat, because it was so rare. It was actually, I interviewed her for her latest book, which was the 25th anniversary of The Artist's Way, and it was her new book was Never Too Late to Start Again. That was her first interview for the new book, and also her first podcast in history that she had ever done. So that was huge. I have so many favorites, but I have to say I just recently broadcast an episode that was one of my favorites, and I think will be for in the future, and it's by Chip Conley. Chip Conley may not be a household name to a lot of people, but he's always been a hero of mine. He's a very successful entrepreneur of a chain of boutique hotels, and retired from the hotel business at 52. And then by complete twist of fate, was asked to join Airbnb. Now, that seems like a crazy contradiction, right? Because Airbnb is the greatest threat to the hotel business.
Yeah.
Right. But the beautiful thing was what he learned by working with all these millennials is the intergenerational benefit of being an older person in the mid-50s working with a bunch of 20-somethings. And so he now has written a book called Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder. And it's my new favorite because the true lesson here is that he is out to reframe what we think of as getting older. So he's taken the word elder out of elderly and saying that there's a wisdom to be available. And here's the big reframe around aging, which is what makes it my favorite. And I am 55, so this is, for me, a really key, I can say it's true, and it's a key mindset shift, which is that as longevity of life gets longer, it's not that we're older longer, which is the false impression. The truth is we're younger longer, which is why the 50s is the new 30s and 70s is the new 50s. We're actually younger in spirit and in health and in attitude and in curiosity. We're younger longer. We're only old for maybe the last 10 years of our lives. And if the average age becomes 100, we're only old from 90 to 100, but we can be youthful up to that point. And I love that attitude shift.
And even some of my favorite people on the planet are in their 90s, and they are some of the most energetic, happy people you've ever met in your entire life.
Who doesn't love Betty White?
Exactly.
I mean, come on. She
Norman
keeps on going.
Lear, Dick Van Dyke. There's some great ones out there. And I have to say, I was listening to that episode, and I was so excited, and I wanted to ask you actually about that in particular. And you talk about this, one thing you brought up was attainment versus attunement.
Isn't that good?
To that? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, man. I'm so glad you're bringing that up. So I think, again, wonderful mindset shift, because I find as a podcast host, especially for my show, you mentioned create, serve, and be prosperous. That's my sign off. And it's also the foundation of the show. Although the standout statement or tagline of the show is business with a soul, right? That's really what we're going for. But create, serve, and be prosperous is not only my sign off, it's also it's the framework for our show. So my vetting team, the team that decides who's going to be a guest on the show, which is not my final decision. It can be, but I rarely go against them anymore because Cheryl, who leads the team, is almost always right. So why argue with her? Even if I think it's crazy, I'm like, really, this person? Why? And she states her case, and I go along with it, and she's always right. So I don't argue. But all of our guests have to fit into one of those three buckets: create, serve, or be prosperous. They have to either be about creativity or how to build a business. They have to be about serving customers and the service of sales, or they have to be about be prosperous, which is not the obvious financial part of prosperity. Be prosperous to us means wellness and health and wholeness. So I have this, dynamic in the show of, on one hand, I can be talking to somebody who's all about hustle and, sleep is for suckers. And then the next person can be talking about, I had a conversation with someone for an episode yet to be broadcast, but it was all about work-life blend. And have not even balance, but blend. And so because this weird dichotomy, I asked Chip about that. I'm like, which path do we walk on? Do we walk on the hustle? Because Shark Tank tells us if we're not working 90 hours a week, we're losers. And somebody else is telling us that your highest value is take care of yourself and wellness. I'm like, I don't know what to do. So
find the balance in there somewhere,
exactly.
Right? How?
And so what he said is, because, well, there are times in life and in business for attainment and other times for attunement. So attainment is this idea that, hey, there are times you have to put in those extra hours because you're looking to, and probably maybe up until throughout our 30s, and looking back at my own life, I would say my 20s and 30s were about attainment. I worked way out of proportion to my personal life. And I'm not necessarily saying this is a good way to go, because I could have died at 35 and would have missed, so much. But the fact of the matter is, it's an attainment stage of life when we're trying to attain the home, the car, the children, the family life. It's a stage of life in which we are likely attaining a lot of things, career status, etc. But then there's other times in life when, like, I feel like now in my 50s, this is all about attunement. right? I'm highly attuned to what's going on around me. I will never sacrifice at this point time with my kids for working. I will cancel speaking gigs if I have to, if it means that I can't see one of my kids or have that opportunity. So this is much more. I live on the ocean now because I get high vibrations of attunement from the ocean. And we can look at it as stages in life, but what Chip also says so wisely is that we have to stop thinking about life in 3 stages: youth, adulthood, and old age. There is no 3 stages. The fact matter is this is just a blend of all those stages. And in any day, there's a time for attainment and a time for attunement. And it's the power is in knowing the difference. I think it's a fantastic phrase that he's come up with. So that's what we talked about in the interview.
Oh my gosh. And I really love the reframe of living younger longer.
Me too.
That it's just, because our life expectancy keeps extending, we're not older longer. We're living younger longer. I love that.
Absolutely. And hopefully this will also mean that folks in there, I'm sure you have a lot of listeners who are on the younger side, millennials. The fact of the matter is, enjoy your 20s. Stay in your 20s longer. Don't be in such a hurry. I was married by 20, had kids by 28. Don't be in such a hurry. Hopefully that younger longer will reflect all the way down to those years. And hey, take the year or 2 gap year after high school, before college, and just be younger longer because you have plenty of time. We're not dying at 40 anymore. You have plenty of time. Hopefully. God willing.
Yeah, I know. We never know, but,
right.
I think it is just always about enjoying, following your bliss,
right.
Staying present, being in the moment, and do what makes you happy. Don't do what you think you should be doing. And I did just quickly look up the Vulcan salute from Spock. It's live long and prosper.
There you go.
So,
I've heard that.
I wanted to clarify. I'm like, wait, I know this is tied to Spock somehow. So I think that's the theme for today. Live long and prosper.
There you go.
And being such an expert in this podcasting space, I wanted to see if you had any great advice for people that are wanting to get into the game or just starting out in the podcasting world. Do you have any good tips or guidance for us?
Well, first of all, I don't think everybody should have a podcast. Because it's, I say, look, you're either going to spend a lot of time or a lot of money. It's one or the other, right? And in the beginning, you might be spending, if you don't have the money to finance it, you'll be spending a lot of time doing your own editing and all that work, or you're going to spend a lot of money getting other people to do those things. So it's one or the other, but it's not an easy ride. Don't kid yourself. It's why the average podcast lasts 7 episodes.
Oh, is that really what it is?
That's statistic, truth. Yep. The average podcast
we made it past the hurdle for the Shine strategy.
Yeah. That is statistically the average podcast lasts only 7 episodes because everybody thinks, oh, this is easy. And there's not a high bar of entry. It's not costly to start a podcast. My biggest advice, as you might imagine, would be to decide who you're meant to serve through your podcast and know their lingo, right? I mean, the reason we believe, and I've asked when we broadcast the 500th episode, what I did differently is for the 500th episode is I had my whole podcast team get on a collective call and just have a conversation. And we talked about kind of behind the scenes of the show. And then unplanned, they started asking me questions and I started asking them questions. And I asked my producer, why do you think this show has worked? Like, do you have any insight? He's been with me almost the whole journey. I'm like, why? Because it still astonishes me. I mean, we have 25 to 30,000 listeners a month. And I'm like, why do you think this worked? And he said, because you have you have a very defined audience that you're serving and you know their lingo. It's exactly what I teach. And that I think is important it needs to be, as your show is, it needs to be the people you're meant to serve, that you know them, you know their journey, and you know how you can help them. And then just stay consistent. Be careful on the guest vetting process. We're so picky. Anybody that gets on our show should be honored because we get 12 inquiries a day to be on the show. And we only need to pick 52 a year because I put out 2 episodes a week. But one episode, the talking stick episodes, are just me speaking for about 12 to 15 minutes. And then the main episode is a full-blown interview for 40, 50 minutes. But there's only 50 interviews a year, 52 interviews a year, and yet we'll get 12 inquiries a day. But we're so picky that we make sure that this is going to serve our audience in one of the three buckets of create, serve, or be prosperous.
Oh my gosh, I'm really flattered and honored and humbled to have been selected as one of your upcoming guests. So,
Yes, you
a little
broke through the
teaser.
barrier. It's not easy. It's not easy. I mean, I'm telling you. I mean, it is not easy to get chosen. So
Wow.
that's how good you are. And you had a different
Aw.
topic, and that's the thing. I mean, the thing that gets you through. It's not your name. We're not out for big celebrity. I've had them. Blah blah blah. That's not. It's topic. It's absolute topic. That's what breaks through. It's like, do you have and I don't care if it's a topic we've talked about a million times. What's important is, do you have a different perspective on that topic? Do you have something that when I or my team looks at it, I say, well, that's a different way of looking at this? And you do, which is why your show will be successful, why your episode on my show will be successful, and why you're successful in life, because you bring something different to the idea of PR, because PR itself is not new. It's not interesting. In fact, it's mostly, in a lot of ways, disliked.
Right.
But you have shed a new light on it, pun intended, that suddenly PR can be sexy again. PR is necessary because, as we said in our conversation when you were on my show, which I wholeheartedly believe, is that recognition is a strategy. It's not a destination. My ego doesn't need recognition, but I do need recognition through PR to have the platform to stand on to help the people I'm meant to serve. So PR is everything for that recognition, and you're doing a great job at putting a new perspective on that.
Oh my gosh, that just warms my heart so much to hear all of that. And as my listeners have often heard me say, that moving into this online sort of coaching consulting space and now starting a podcast, like every step of the way has been a hurdle and a challenge and a stretch of my own comfort zone and boundaries. And what's keeping me going is the response that I'm getting from people that are in the community, that are listening to this show, and having wonderful guests like you that really get it and see the value and are just here and appreciating it. And we're all on this journey growing together. So thank you so much for that.
May I offer you something else that will hopefully keep you going?
Yeah, please.
So this is the modern elder in me, speaking to you as someone who's been there, is those things, and this is true for everyone listening, those obstacles, those resistance, I call them the soul's gatekeepers. And they are the indicator that you're going in the right direction. The soul's gatekeepers are the closer you get to what you're meant to do, when you are really aligning with how you can have the greatest impact on the world. There is, and I don't look at it as a test, because all that has a negative energy to me. I look at it as the soul's gatekeepers just showing up to just as a sign, even with the resistance, they're showing up as a sign that you're going in the right direction. And I hope that will keep you going. And I think hopefully it has, what I try to convey in saying that, it has more than the energy of lessons learned, that you have to go through all this negativity to get to the positivity. I just look at it as the soul's gatekeepers. There's a story, and I'm a very spiritual person, but not necessarily a religious person. And yet I was raised Catholic, and I don't know if I had this story entirely accurate, but there's the story of the Tower of Babylon, which, as I understand it, the folks were building a tower to get to God, to find all the answers. And God swept the tower down and spread the people across the land and created multiple languages. So never again could people band together to get the answers. And that's why there's the term babbling in multiple languages. And I've always taken that as an understanding of the soul's gatekeepers, that the greatest mystery of life is what we don't know, and yet we're always in pursuit of it. And as we encounter those challenges along that journey to learn what we don't know, every challenge and obstacle that challenges your gut knowing that you're doing the right thing is an indicator you're going in the right direction. And that, I think, is more sustainable when it comes to keep going than discipline, more sustainable than persistence and resilience and all those things that we hear that keep us going. I think the thing that's most sustainable are paying attention to the signs that are telling you that you're going in the right direction.
Yeah, that's such a cool story. And, it is sort of that, it's hard to put words to it, but there's almost like this pull or this feeling that happens, I think, when you're being called. And I just shared a memory on Facebook the other day. It was a year ago that I did a post saying, who who here has a podcast and what platforms do you use? I'm thinking of doing a show. And wow, a year later, it's like, this is what has happened just from that little inkling or calling or pull that I had, which was completely outside of my comfort zone. So I think it's fascinating to hear your perspective on that, being further along in life and in the game of the podcasting industry. And I hope that I can just keep putting out that amazing content that we talked about today, and someday having 1 million downloads just like you.
Keep going. It'll happen.
Beautiful. Okay, one last question. If you could go back in time to a younger version of yourself, how old would you be, and what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, gosh. So many points in life. So I will go back to, all the way back to 8 years old. I used to, and actually, the only other time I think I've ever mentioned this story was in my TEDx talk. And it is as an 8-year-old boy with a very vivid imagination and extremely shy and withdrawn and afraid, just terribly afraid of the world and of life. I used to gather up all the ceramic figurines that my mother made, pretty large ceramic figurines that were all over the house. And I was kind of a latchkey kid, I guess is what they call it. I was the youngest of 3 boys, so my mom had to go back to work when I was a kid. And the day, back then, you could leave kids at home underage. Nowadays, you'd get in trouble.
They call child services. Yeah,
exactly. But I was home alone a lot. And I had 2 older brothers. I think were supposed to be watching me, but they weren't. So I would gather up all these ceramic figurines, and I would go at the base of a big tree in our front yard, and I would pretend the roots were like places that these figurines and I could live, and I would lay them along what I imagined the pattern of the roots to be coming off the tree. And it was such peace to me to do that and feel like I was underground. And so the advice I would give to myself now is to not be underground. What I wish I got earlier was to come out, shine, and be in the light. And I chose my career as a photographer solely because back in the day we had dark rooms, and it was a place that there was no light. It was a place I wasn't seen. When I was out in the world photographing, between me and the world was a box, the camera, right? So everything in my life was about staying underground and hiding. And it started from the age of 8. And it wasn't until mid-40s that I came out in every way possible. I came out as to let my light shine and help others. I stepped into the spotlight as a speaker. I came out as a gay man at age 44. Look how long I waited, Heather. I was 44, and I don't regret a moment of it because along that way I had a long-term marriage. I have 3 kids. Don't regret a moment of it because of what, as many older gay men have said to me, that's like, well, you had the best of both worlds. And I really did. So I wouldn't change a thing, but I joke about it and say I'm a really slow learner. It not only took me that long to identify with my sexual orientation, it just, more than anything, it took me that long to have the guts to come out of the dark and shine. And boy, I wish I had done that sooner, not at the sacrifice of what I experienced, but that I wish I had even more time to serve, which is why I'm so grateful for Chip's work, because now at 55 years old, I can believe that I have 40 more years to make the impact in the world that I want to.
Oh my gosh. Well, you are making such an incredible impact. So many people, changing lives, I think, on a daily, weekly basis with your show, with your content. You have wonderful content on your website, your TEDx video, which is being seen by thousands of people around the world. Can you share with us today where people can find you? And I think you have a gift for the listeners as well.
Sure. So my primary website is jeffreyshaw.com. The TEDx video is there, but you also will find it at jeffreyshaw.tedx.com. I love sharing that because the core message of that is really important to me about how we hide. We think we're hiding in closets, but the world is seeing us much more translucently than we realize. And that often other people see more in us than we see in ourselves. It's a great way to grow. So jeffreyshaw.com is the primary website. The gift that I love to share, because it creates beautiful connections in my life and for the lives of others, is to take a quick review of your website. what I want to see and how I want to help businesses is to make the customers of businesses feel seen. The problem is that most businesses aren't getting across the message they think they are. So the URL is lingoreview.com, and it asks you some questions. There's an application to fill out, which are the inside questions. What do you think are the values of your customers? What do you value? And so by asking those questions first, most people communicate from their head and their heart genuinely. And then I go to their website and say, gosh, it's a shame that that's not what's coming across on your website at all. And I can statistically tell you, having reviewed hundreds of websites, that 98 out of 100 websites don't actually communicate what is in the heart and soul of the business owner or the corporation for that matter. And that's, if I can fix that gap, I can then help businesses and brands make their customers feel seen. So lingoreview.com, you'll have an opportunity for me to do a quick review of your website and then give you some feedback on how you can change it to more align with speaking the lingo of your ideal customers.
That is an awesome gift. That is, one of the first things we often do with the people in my community is check out their website and see, like you said, is it really conveying who they are, what they do, what their special purpose is in life? So I think there are actually quite a few people in my community that could use that and that will take advantage of that gift. So thank you for being so generous. Thank you for your time today. Any last thoughts before we sign off here?
My last thought is for you. I think you have something great service. As I said, I love your own perspective on what PR means. I think you can have a tremendous impact to keep going. And, you and I both know, at the end of the day, the best thing we can do for others is actually to let our light shine. And let's do more of that. The world needs it.
Yes, the Beatles said it best, right? Let's all shine on.
Is that a Beatles song? I don't I barely know Beatles music. I know about as many Beatles music as I know Star Trek episodes.
All right, it's time to go. Yeah, let's get you Googling or YouTubing.
I haven't come out of those roots very often. But ask me anything about the 188 episodes of The Golden Girls. I could tell you everything.
You're good.
So there you go. We have our areas of mastery.
Oh my gosh. Well, it has been such a joy and a pleasure to speak with you today. And I appreciate all of your insight and wisdom and just your kind heart and generosity. And I really hope that my community and listeners will be heading over to check out your show, The Creative Warriors, and just, a little teaser that I'll be on there soon. So we'll keep everyone posted.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Shine Strategy Podcast. I invite you to join me at shineinsiders.com for a free masterclass where you can get more inspiration and strategies to get visible and change the world. Your voice matters. Please subscribe, rate, and share this show so we can continue to grow on this journey together. Until the next one, it's Heather Burgett, your Shine Strategist, signing off.